Have you ever thought about the moments that change your life forever? Not the big planned ones like a wedding or a graduation, but the quiet ones that happen in the middle of the chaos when you're just trying to survive. For a man named Marcus Thorne, that moment happened in the dust and the noise of a forgotten war. Close your eyes and picture it. The air thick and hot, tasting of smoke and dry earth. The heavy thump, thump, thump of helicopter blades cutting through the sky. That was Marcus's world. He was a UN pilot, a man who flew into places everyone else was fleeing. His hands were steady on the controls, his eyes constantly scanning the scarred land below, a land called Veridia. On this day, the mission was simple. Get in, get the aid workers out. But in a war zone, nothing is ever simple. A sudden sharp crack echoed. A flash of light. The helicopter shuddered violently like a wounded bird. Alarms blared. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs, but his training took over. He fought with the controls, his jaw clenched tight, guiding the crippled aircraft down in a jarring, grinding landing that sent plumes of dust billowing into the air. Silence. Not a peaceful silence, but a heavy waiting one. The kind that rings in your ears after a loud noise. Marcus pushed open the cockpit door, his boots crunching on broken concrete. He was stranded, alone in the middle of a town that had been torn apart by conflict. Buildings were skeletons of their former selves. The air still smelled of gunpowder. And then he saw her. Amidst the gray rubble, a splash of faded color. A small girl. She couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. She was sitting on a broken block of concrete, perfectly still. Her clothes were torn, her face was smudged with dirt, but it was her eyes that captured Marcus and held him. They weren't filled with tears. They weren't wide with fear. They were calm, deep and old, holding a silence that spoke of things a child should never have to see. In her arms, she clutched a little doll. It was made from scraps of cloth and a bit of string, a tiny, brave statement of love in a world of hate. Something broke inside Marcus then. He was a father himself, with a daughter safe and sound thousands of miles away. Seeing this child, this little soul surrounded by so much destruction, it shattered the professional wall he kept around his heart. His mission was no longer about fixing his helicopter. It was about her. He moved slowly, so as not to startle her. He knelt down, his tall frame making him her equal. "Hello," he said, his voice softer than he had used in years. "My name is Marcus." The girl just watched him, those ancient eyes taking him in. He pointed to the UN badge on his uniform. "I'm here to help. I can get you out of here. To a safe place." He held his breath. He was a stranger, a giant in a flight suit. Why should she trust him? For a long moment, she didn't move. Then slowly, she looked from his eyes to his outstretched hand. It was the most important decision of both their lives, and she made it. She uncurled one small hand from her doll and placed it trustingly into his. A wave of emotion, so powerful it almost knocked him over, washed through Marcus. This tiny, simple act of faith in this place of broken promises felt like a miracle. He helped her up, her small hand completely lost in his, and led her back to the helicopter. He worked quickly to make temporary repairs, all the while aware of her quiet presence, watching him. He was no longer just a pilot. He was her lifeline. The journey from the dust of Veridia to the green rolling hills of Oregon, USA, was more than just a trip across an ocean. It was a voyage to another planet for the little girl, whose name was Lina. Everything was new, and everything was overwhelming. The sheer quiet was deafening. The supermarket, with its endless aisles of brightly packaged food, was a terrifying maze. A simple car ride was a marvel. She would flinch at sudden, loud noises, and the ghosts of her past visited her in her sleep, causing her to wake up screaming. But Marcus was there, every single time. He was a steady, patient presence. When she had nightmares, he was there in a chair by her bed, reading to her in a calm voice until she fell back asleep. He taught her English, one patient word at a time. He introduced her to the strange joy of a hamburger, the simple magic of television, the wonder of fireflies blinking in the soft summer night. Slowly, carefully, the fragile seedling of trust they had planted in the ruins began to grow roots and then to blossom. The quiet, stoic girl began to laugh, a real, genuine laugh that lit up her whole face. She made a friend at school. She started to call Marcus Dad. And as she grew, something amazing happened. They discovered Lina had a brilliant, curious mind. She wasn't just smart, she saw the world in gears and levers, in structures and solutions. She loved to take things apart to see how they worked. Her passion was engineering. Marcus, who could fix a helicopter but not a toaster, was in awe. He nurtured that spark with everything he had. He filled the garage with science kits and model bridges. He brought home piles of books. He found a retired engineer in town who was willing to mentor her. Their bond deepened in that garage, surrounded by schematics and the smell of solder. It was built on more than rescue, yo. It was built on mutual respect and a shared love of learning. She also started asking questions about Veridia, about her life before, and Marcus, with honesty and love, told her everything he knew. He showed her the few photos he had. He never made her feel that her past was something to be forgotten, but a part of her to be understood. He helped her find a community where she could hear the music and see the colors of her homeland. One evening, he found her in the workshop, a complicated model spread out before her. She was frowning in concentration, her brow furrowed just like his did when he was thinking hard. She didn't see him watching. In that moment, he didn't see the brilliant engineer she was becoming or the brave survivor she had been. He just saw his daughter, his Lina. Their family wasn't an accident of paperwork. It was a choice reaffirmed every single day by love, patience, and a promise made in the dust. The little girl from the ruins had found her home, and the pilot who saved her had found a purpose deeper than any mission. Their life was full, and it was good. They had no way of knowing that the land he had rescued her from would one day be the only place that could rescue him. Life has a way of settling into a beautiful, comfortable rhythm, doesn't it? For 20 years, the rhythm of Marcus and Lina's life was a sweet, steady song. The frantic fear of the early days melted away, replaced by the quiet confidence of a love that was as solid as the ground beneath their feet. Marcus retired, his hair turned a distinguished silver, and his hands, once constantly nicked from repairing helicopter parts, were now more often stained with garden soil. He'd sit on the porch and watch with a pride so deep it felt like a physical ache, as Lina, his brilliant, fierce daughter, grew into her own. She became a successful engineer, her mind solving problems he could barely even understand. They were a team. He was her dad, her biggest fan. She was his daughter, his greatest joy. And then the music stopped. It started small, a tiredness that wouldn't go away, a stumble where there used to be a steady step. The strong, steady pilot who had carried a child from a war zone now found the walk from the house to the mailbox a marathon. Doctor's appointments blurred into more tests, more worried frowns, more hushed conversations in hallways. The diagnosis was a word they'd never heard before, a rare and aggressive immune disorder. It was like his own body was turning against him. The man who commanded skies was now confined to a sterile, white hospital bed, the wires and tubes a cruel mockery of the control cables of his helicopter. He was fading right before Lina's eyes. She watched, her heart breaking piece by piece. When the light in his eyes dimmed, she held his hand, the same hand she had trusted all those years ago, and it felt so fragile. The doctors were out of options. Until one day, a specialist from a world-renowned clinic came with a final, desperate roll of the dice, an experimental procedure. It was risky, but it was hope. There was just one enormous catch. The treatment required a catalytic agent, a rare mineral called crystallus, and the only place on Earth it was found was in the remote, treacherous mountains of Veridia. The name of the country hung in the sterile hospital air like a ghost, Veridia, the place of nightmares, the place of ruins, the place he had saved her from. Lina didn't hesitate, not for a second. She looked at Marcus, at his pale face against the white pillow, and she made the same promise he had made to her. A promise of safety, a promise of a future. "No, Lina, it's too dangerous," he whispered, his voice a thin thread of what it once was. She leaned down, kissed his forehead, and her voice was steady, filled with an iron will he recognized as his own. "You went into the ruins for me, Dad. Now it's my turn." And just like that, the circle began to close. Her return to Veridia was a surreal and painful homecoming. The moment she stepped off the plane, the heat and the smells hit her like a physical blow, stirring memories she had long buried. But this was no time for ghosts. She had a mission. The capital city was a maze of corruption. Government offices with lazy spinning fans, where officials demanded bribes with smiling faces. Permits were lost. Paperwork was delayed. Every door was closed. And the shadow of a powerful warlord named Jomo, who controlled the Cristallo supply, loomed over everything. The legitimate path was a dead end. So driven by a love that was stronger than fear, Lina went off the map. She hired a rugged jeep and a wary driver and headed into the volatile heartland toward the mountains where the Cristallos was mined. The journey was terrifying. Militia checkpoints with young men holding rifles too big for them, villages struggling to survive in the harsh landscape. And then something miraculous happened. In one of these villages, while she was asking for directions, an older woman stared at her with wildly disbelieving eyes. She called Lina by a different name, her mother's name. This woman was her aunt. She had family here, cousins she had never known. As she was embraced by these strangers who were her blood, Lina felt a missing piece of her soul click into place. She wasn't just an American engineer here on a mission. She was also Lina, daughter of Veridia, coming home. It gave her a new strength, a new resolve. Using her family's connections, Lina secured what few outsiders ever could, an audience with Warlord Jomo. He was exactly as intimidating as she had imagined. A man surrounded by armed guards, his eyes sharp and suspicious. He didn't care about a sick old man in America. But Lina didn't plead. She stood tall, her engineer's mind taking over. She saw his operation, the inefficient, destructive way his men mined the Cristallos, poisoning the land and the water for the very communities he relied on. "I am not here to ask for a handout," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I am here to make you an offer." She laid out a plan. Using her engineering expertise, she proposed a new, more efficient extraction method. It would increase his yield, his profits, and, crucially, it would protect the environment and the people. She was trading her intellect, the very gift Marcus had nurtured, for her father's life. Jomo was silent for a long, tense moment, studying this brave, brilliant woman who dared to negotiate with him. Then a slow smile spread across his face. He was a businessman after all. He agreed. The journey back to the hospital in Oregon was the longest of Lina's life. Every second felt like an hour, every delay a potential tragedy. She clutched the small, heavy container of Cristallos as if it were his very heartbeat. When she finally burst into his room, she was weary to her bones, but her eyes burned with a fierce, new-sprung hope. The doctors took the mineral and immediately began the complex procedure. The hours that followed were an agony of suspense. Lina kept her vigil, holding Marcus's hand, whispering to him about Veridia, about her family, about the garage, about coming home. She poured every memory, every ounce of her love into him. And then, a miracle. A nurse pointed to a monitor. The numbers were stabilizing. The color, slowly like a sunrise, began to return to his cheeks. The treatment was working. When Marcus's eyelids finally fluttered open, they were clear. They were focused. They found Lina's face, and in that single silent look, an entire conversation passed between them. There was no need for thank you. There was only understanding. The man who had given a lost girl a future had his own future given back to him by the woman she had become. He squeezed her hand, the same hand he had held in the ruins. The circle was now complete. Lina had repaid her father not out of duty, but out of a love as deep and as vast as the ocean. She had journeyed into the heart of her own past to secure his future. In saving him, she had finally fully woven together the two halves of her soul, the brilliant engineer from America and the courageous daughter of Veridia. Their story proves that family isn't just about blood. It's about promise. It's about showing up. It's about a love so strong it's willing to cross deserts, scale mountains, and brave any danger to bring you home.